Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. It's another Premier League predictions video. It's a double game week this week. We've got some midweek clashes to contend with as the games are coming thick and fast. You can easily tell we are entering that busy festive period of the season where the games are left, right and centre. The Premier League table is beginning to take shape. We've got some intriguing clashes this week that are going to affect the entirety of the Premier League table. And of course, this is the video where I go through each and every single game coming up in this round of Premier League fixtures, talk about them, and of course, give my predictions on how I think each and every game will end up. Before we go any further though, I would like to remind you all to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things are always and forever greatly appreciated. And of course, I encourage you lot to get involved in the comment section down below. I'm sure you have a lot of interesting thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it. That will make for great and interesting reading down below. But mainly, of course, I want to see your predictions on each and every game coming up. But without further ado, let's get on with the predictions. We're going to start with Tuesday's games, and first up we have got a clash at Molineux between Wolverhampton Wanderers and Burnley. Wolves, of course, come into this game off the back of a defeat. They lost 2-1 to Arsenal at the weekend, whilst Burnley picked up only their second win of the season in what was an absolute hammering of Sheffield United, with Vincent Kompany's side coming out as 5-0 winners in that game there in the relegation battle, of course. Big game this one. Burnley will look to make it back-to-back wins. Wolves want to get back to winning ways, of course. You would say that Wolves are probably the favourites. You would say that Wolves need a more clinical attack, but they also leak a fair few goals. Burnley definitely could take advantage of that. It could be a very intriguing game down below, but I think there is only one winner in this, and I've got to say it's going to be Wolves. I think Burnley's mini boost of that win against Sheffield United will be somewhat short-lived. Wolves to get the win here, and I'm going for a 2-1 victory in favour of the home side. Next up, we're off to Kenilworth Road for Luton Town, welcoming Arsenal to their home ground. Intriguing game again in this one. You've got a Luton Town side who, last time out, of course, lost 3-1 at the hands of Brentford. You've got an Arsenal side who are top of the table, 2 points clear, looking to maintain that stance at the top of the table after their 2-1 victory over Wolves on Saturday. Massive game this one. Luton not to be taken for granted or maybe be a foregone conclusion, especially when they're at home this season. Liverpool found that out the hard way. Man United also had a very difficult game, although they did win in their game. They did find it very difficult when they were playing against Luton away from home. Arsenal should not take this game as a foregone conclusion. They should not take this game for granted. This always has the making of a banana skin. But in saying that, you would expect Arsenal to get the job done. And that is why I am going to go for a 2-0 victory in favour of the Gunners. Moving on to Wednesday's games, and first up we are at the Seaside, a very bitterly cold Seaside I would imagine, for Brighton against Brentford at the Amex Stadium. Massive game this one between two sides who of course are looking to, Brighton's looking to get back to winning ways after their 3-2 defeat to Chelsea at the weekend, whilst Brentford beat Luton by 3-1, meaning they're looking for back-to-back wins themselves. Big game and interesting game this one between two good footballing sides at times. This one could be a very underrated game this week. So definitely do look out for this one. Brighton obviously have their injury worries and they have not been at the races fully this season. Brentford, pretty inconsistent to say the least, but on their day we know that they can be tough opposition for most teams, and I would imagine that this one is going to be a very intriguing game nonetheless between a Brighton side who will like to get the ball down and play some nice and attractive football, and a Brentford side who I would imagine will try and soak up the pressure and hit Brighton on the counter-attack. It really could be a very fascinating game of football to unfold before our very eyes on Wednesday night. How I see the game going, this one could go any which way. It genuinely could. I'm going to say a draw though. I'm going to call it down the middle. I really can't pick a winner between them. And I'm going to say that this game ends, I want to say goals galore kind of game. I'm going to say this game ends 2-2 come the final whistle. Next up, we're off to Selhurst Park for a big clash between Crystal Palace and Bournemouth. Both these sides are in need of the victory. Both of these sides coming into this game off the back of draws from the previous weekend, with Palace drawing 1-1 with West Ham and Bournemouth drawing 2-2 with Aston Villa. Intriguing game. Again, it's a game that really could go any which way. Palace on their day, we know, can be very difficult opposition for anybody, and especially with it being under the lights at Selhurst Park, it really could make for a very heated and very hostile atmosphere for Bournemouth to walk into. But as we know, Bournemouth on their day can be very good. They play some good football under their new manager. But they sometimes just struggle to put away chances and to stop leaking silly goals when it matters most. Very fascinating game, this one. I'm going to give the slightest of edges to Crystal Palace. It very well could be a draw, this one. I'm going to give the slightest of edges to Crystal Palace because they are going to be the home side. And I'm going to say that Palace come out of this game as 2-1 winners. Next up, off to Craven Cottage for Fulham against Nottingham Forest. Fulham were, of course, involved in that 7-goal thriller that they were just edged out of at the weekend by Liverpool, with the Reds winning 4-3 against Marco Silva's side, whilst Nottingham Forest, of course, lost 1-0 at the hands of Everton. Both of these sides looking to get back to winning ways. Fulham, of course, have scored a fair few goals. They've scored 6 goals in the past 2 games, so that's something to go off, but they have been leaking a fair few goals as well. They got fortunate against Wolves in that 3-2 win there. Against Liverpool, they were gifted some of their goals, but obviously you still have to take your chances, of course, and I'm not denying that. But at the same time, this one could be a very intriguing game, to say the least. Nottingham Forest, we know that away from home they are not as solid as they are at home, but they need to start picking up more results, especially as Steve Cooper once again is starting to come under a little bit of scrutiny and maybe a little bit of pressure from certain aspects of the Nottingham Forest fan base, and maybe even some from in-house as well. So that's going to be intriguing to see how he manages to cope with that. Could start with a good win here though, but this game again could go any which way. I'm going to say that this game ends in a draw, and I'm going to say that Fulham and Nottingham Forest share the spoils with a 1-1 stalemate draw here. Next, we're off to Bramall Lane for Sheffield United hosting Liverpool. Massive clash between a side that is battling relegation and a side that is hoping to challenge for the Premier League title maybe this season. You've got Sheffield United side who come into this game off the back of an absolute hammering that they took at Burnley, losing 5-0 to their fellow relegation candidates, whilst Liverpool, of course, managed to scrape by Fulham with a 4-3 victory against Marco Silva's side. The intriguing thing about this game is that as of today, as of Monday at the time of recording, Monday morning, it is being said that Sheffield United manager Paul Heckingbottom may be about to be sacked as Sheffield United manager following that pretty bad defeat at the hands of Burnley on Saturday. Typical, isn't it? A new manager bounce kicks in just as they're about to face Liverpool. No, regardless of that, Liverpool should be winning this game regardless. Liverpool should be adding insult to injury. With all due respect to Sheffield United, Liverpool should not be worried about a Sheffield United side that are down on their luck, concede way too many goals, and, like I say, are pretty much relegation fodder at this point as things stand. But that isn't to say that Liverpool should be cautious about this game. We saw against Fulham, everyone was expecting a pretty comfortable performance against Fulham. Liverpool had to do it the hard way because of some poor defensive errors. And I'm sure Sheffield United may analyse the things that obviously looked vulnerable to Liverpool in terms of set pieces and defensive counter-attacking, and maybe see that as a weakness and a sort of kink in the Liverpool armour. In saying that though, like I say, manager bounce or not, vulnerabilities or not, Liverpool should be getting this game done and dusted, which is why I'm going to say that this game ends 3-0 to the Reds, and fingers crossed we get that clean sheet. Next up, we're off to Villa Park. What a game this is. And in any other circumstances, probably would be my game of the week or my main event of the week. But there is another game that I think is somewhat bigger. It is Aston Villa at home taking on Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. Villa, of course, coming into this game off the back of a draw, a 2-2 draw with Bournemouth at the weekend. Whilst Manchester City come into this game off the back of 3 draws in a row, with their latest being a 3-3 draw with Tottenham. It's a massive game, this one. Massive game because you've got an Aston Villa side that are unbelievable at home. Away from home, there are somewhat question marks. We saw that against Bournemouth. But at home, they are unbelievable. And I believe that in all competitions, they are 15 games at home unbeaten. 13 of them are in the Premier League. They welcome a Manchester City side who are a little bit frustrated, a little bit annoyed. They have on the field and off the field issues as far as what they're concerned, in my opinion. And they walk in to a Villa Park, which is going to be rocking, which is going to be fiery, which is going to be hostile. And off the back of 3 draws in a row, I really worry about City picking up a result here. Especially with how good this Unai Emery side can be, how strong they can be, how resolute they can be. And look, if there's going to be any team to break this record of Aston Villa's, it probably would be Manchester City and Pep Guardiola. But in saying that, as I said in the video I did yesterday after City drew 3-3 with Spurs, it's about picking your moments against this City side. And definitely on the counter-attack, Aston Villa have some very dangerous players. The likes of Moussa Diaby, the likes of Ollie Watkins, John McGinn, Douglas Luiz. They can certainly be extremely dangerous when in transition of defence to attack. And I feel like if City get too comfortable again, if City get too casual, shall we say, on the ball, in the game, controlling possession, and then they switch off for that split second, Aston Villa can pounce and Aston Villa can definitely take advantage. And that's why I feel like Aston Villa can get a result from this game, and I feel like this will end in a draw. Aston Villa's home form, I think they'll get something from this game, so I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw come the final whistle and hope that Villa can take more points off of Pep Guardiola's side. Jumping a little bit ahead now to Thursday's games, and first up we have got Everton taking on Newcastle United at Goodison Park. Big game for both of these sides, this one, with Everton, of course, both of these sides actually coming into this game off the back of 1-0 wins. Everton beat Nottingham Forest by 1-0 on Saturday, and on the same day, Newcastle beat Manchester United by 1-0 as well. Interesting game. Big game. You've got Everton at Goodison Park under the lights. Could be a very hostile environment for Newcastle to contend with. And of course, Newcastle still had a fair few issues with injuries and things, but they are starting to get things together. They produced a very good victory against Manchester United on Saturday. One that could have been a lot more had their finishing been a little bit more on point. But a win is still a win. They managed to get the win and the clean sheet. That will do Eddie Howe's side the world of good. And they're coming to this game against an Everton side who they'll definitely be fancying their chances with. But at the same time, Everton, quite resolute, quite strong under Sean Dyche. They've got this sort of way about them this season where they seem to pick up points in unlikely scenarios, and this is definitely an unlikely scenario. You definitely back Newcastle to win, but of course that's never a foregone conclusion, and especially with obviously what's happened with Everton so far this season, we know that that kind of siege mentality that Sean Dyche is trying to drum up and build up with this Everton side could become apparent, and it could also hurt Newcastle, and especially it's gonna push the limits and the tests of this Newcastle squad as a whole, obviously with them playing a game every other few days. So it could be a very interesting game, this one, for the Magpies as well as for the Toffees. I, for one, am leaning more towards Newcastle, but I honestly would not be shocked in any way, shape or form if Everton were to get something from this game. But I am going to lean more towards Newcastle in this one. And I'm going to say that Newcastle come out of this game as 2-1 winners. Our penultimate game this week comes from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Thursday night kickoff. It is Tottenham against West Ham. A big London derby of sorts, pitting Ange Postecoglou against David Moyes. Both of these sides coming into this game off the back of draws. Tottenham drew 3-3 of Manchester City, of course, on Sunday. And on the same day, West Ham drew 1-1 with Crystal Palace. It's a big game. It's a very intriguing game. And it's obviously going to be a feisty battle between these two. You've got Ange Postecoglou, who refuses to completely adapt his way of playing to anybody. And we saw that against City on Sunday. Everyone thought they would get beat against City, myself included, of course. But that wasn't to be the case. They managed to really dig deep and managed to pull out a brilliant point at the Etihad against the defending Premier League champions, of course. Whilst West Ham, been a bit inconsistent, but they're starting to pick up a bit of form in key players. Like I say, Jarrod Bowen all season has been pretty solid. Mohamed Kudus, of course, is starting to get warmed up to the Premier League. He looks the real deal. So, it's going to be very interesting to see these two teams battle it out between Tottenham's really on the front foot style against West Ham's counter-attacking approach. So this one could be a very intriguing battle played out between two very different managers with two very different styles. How I see the game going, I think there'll be goals galore in this one. I'm going to put my hat down. There's going to be at least 4 goals in this one. And with that being said, there could be a winner between these two. It wouldn't surprise me if it does finish like a 3-2 game, but I'm going to call it down the middle of a 4-goal thriller, and I'm going to say that this game ends 2-2 come the final whistle. And finally, in what I believe to be the biggest game of this round of fixtures, the main event of this week's midweek Premier League action, it comes from Old Trafford. It is Manchester United taking on Chelsea, Wednesday night viewing. This one should be an interesting battle, to say the least. You've got a United side who come into this game after suffering a bad defeat to Newcastle on Saturday. They lost 1-0, but that doesn't exactly tell the entire story of the game. And you've got a Chelsea side coming into this game after scraping through Brighton by 3-2 with a 10-man reduction. So a big result there for Chelsea and a big confidence and morale boost for that Chelsea squad who managed to do that with 10 men against a very difficult challenge in Brighton, of course. This one is going to be intriguing, and this one is intriguing for a lot of different reasons. You've got a Manchester United side who are very inconsistent, very awkward, very weird. You've got a Chelsea side who are very awkward, very weird. When they turn up and play well, they turn up and play well. When they don't, they are poor. Neither side has any natural killer finishers. They're not instinctive or prolific finishers up front. Neither side has a what I would call solid enough defence for me to be thinking that either of these sides could come out of this with a clean sheet. But at the same time, both attacks are pretty poor. This game is going to be won in midfield, and I would say, given the balance of play and given how these two teams set up, I would give my backing and my edge to Chelsea in this one, which means they are probably going to go on and win the game. A draw is certainly possible. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if United managed to sneak a win by some way, shape or form. But in saying all of this, I've got to back Chelsea in this one. Even if it is at Old Trafford, even if it is with Nicholas Jackson of all people up front, I've got to go with Chelsea on this one. And that's why I'm going to say that in this game it ends 2-1 to the Blues. And there you have it. Those are just my thoughts, comments, opinions, but most of all, of course, my predictions on each and every single Premier League game to be played out in the first midweek game of Premier League fixtures, a round of Premier League fixtures to be played midweek this season. But I want to know what your thoughts, your comments, your opinions, but most of all, I want to know what your predictions are for each and every single game this week in another round of Premier League fixtures. Leave them all in the comment section down below. I'm sure they'll all make for interesting and great reading. Otherwise, hit the like button on the way up. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things are always and probably greatly appreciated. And of course, Don't forget to hit that like button on the way out. Subscribe if you're new and want to see more content like this. Both things are always incredibly greatly appreciated. And of course, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Premier League predictions video, and I will see you all again soon in another video or live stream or whatever it may be. Cheers, guys. Thanks everyone for watching. Enjoy the football, and I will see you all again soon in a bit. Take care. Speak to you soon.